Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. So after the supervised learning, we are going to start with the topics on unsupervised learning. So under unsupervised learning, we know the very first technique is clustering. So when we talk of clustering, basically it is a technique for finding the similarity of the groups. So it is under unsupervised learning in which the data is not labeled in this case, and we have to work on that. So working on that, in which we work on the similarity, the technique for that is clustering, in which various clusters are formed. Clusters are also known as groups, where the data instances of similar type are grouped into one cluster, or you can say we can make one group of that. It is often a technique under unsupervised task in which no class values denoting any a priori group of the data instances are given, which is the case when we talk of supervised learning, where the cases are given. We know that this will be the class and we have to organize the data into a particular class, but in this case we are not aware of how many clusters will be formed or how many final result groups be formed. Due to historical reasons, clustering is often considered synonyms with unsupervised learning, in which we can also work with the association rule mining. So basically, it is a mode of unsupervised learning where we are given a collection of data points, and the goal is to find the structure in the data that will organize the data into sensible groups, means that meaningful groups. So here it is convenient and valid organization of the data, and there is not we are not running after any rule. So in this case, we can say there are three clusters. We have formed group 1, group 2, group 3. So based on certain uh, similarities, three groups have been formed, or you can say three clusters are formed. So when we talk of clustering, we can say we are organizing the t-shirts like medium size, small size and large size t-shirts are there. Or we can say in marketing segments, customers are according to their similarities. We can go with the target marketing in clustering. We can also consider example of a collection of given text documents, and we want to organize them according to their content similarities or to produce topic hierarchy. In this case, we can also use clustering, and it has applications in almost every field like medicine, psychology, botany, sociology, biology, archaeology, marketing, insurance, library. So in almost all the application areas. So let's discuss the difference between classification and clustering. So classification is a supervised learning technique in which we talk about identifying the instances of classes from the pre-labeled data. On the other hand, talking of clustering, it is a supervised learning technique which finds a natural groups for instances of given unlabeled data. So it works on similarity. As we can see, clusters are being formed. So there are one cluster, two cluster and three clusters, we can say, denoted in blue color, green one and the red one. So here it is also working on the nearest or the closest point based on certain distance matrices. So we know that classification works is a model that predicts a probable classification for a given input. On the other hand, clustering model maps a given input into the data clusters. Classification uses supervised learning, whereas clustering uses unsupervised one. Data is labeled in classification, and in clustering there is no labeling of data required. Number of categories are known when we are performing classification, but when we are talking of clustering, we are not aware of at the end how many clusters will be formed. Suppose at the initial stage we have been told to make 5 groups, but at the end when the result comes, it may be 10. Total 10 groups may be formed based on the similarities. So this is a two in classification two-step process to train the data, and prediction is done, whereas clustering is a single step process. We can also say when we're talking of classification, it works on finding the differences, but when we talk of clustering, it works on finding the similarities in the groups. So we have a cluster analysis. So cluster analysis is nothing, it's just finding the group of objects, such as the objects in a group will be of similar type to one another and they are not different to others. And in this case we can say there are three clusters. They are of these data items are of three types and these are different from others. So similarity among themselves and differentiate from the others. So we can say uh, here we can say that the intra-cluster distance are minimized. That is, within the cluster the distance is minimized, and the inter-cluster distance, that is the distance between the two points or the two clusters, will be maximized in this case. So in this case, if we have a look at this, notion of a cluster can be ambiguous. If we look at this, we can also get confused how many clusters are there. So if we work on this can, here we can say there are simply two clusters. So in this case, if we look at this diagram, we are having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 clusters with clear differences from each other. In this case, we can say total 4 clusters are there. But if we look at this, there is no clear differentiation in this. So it can be an ambiguous task in this case. So talking of various types of clustering, we have well separated clusters, center based clusters, contiguous clusters, density based, property or conceptual clusters, and described by an objective function clusters. So firstly, we have well separated clusters. When we talk of well separated cluster, here we can say they are totally different from each other. There is a proper separation between these. So here a cluster is a set of points that any point in a cluster is closer or more similar, but to the every other point in the other cluster there is no point of similarity between the others. So they are clearly separable and also known as well separated. And we have center based clusters. So in center based clusters, here we can see there are four center based clusters. They are four clusters. So where a object is a set of objects such that the object in a cluster is closer or more similar to the center point. Like if this in this, if we are having this center point, then based on the center point they are the other data points are organized into this based on this center point. So that's why they are known as center based clusters. We have contiguity based clusters. So these are also known as contiguous clusters, where a cluster is formed by following a particular continuous pattern. Like suppose we are starting at this point, based on their continuity other points are formed in a cluster. So where a cluster is a set of points such that a point in a cluster is closer or more similar to the one or on the other point, and the cluster at any point is not in the cluster. So we have density based cluster, where a cluster is a dense region of points which is separated by low density regions from the other regions in the high density. So like we are talking of sparse and dense points. So sparse are scattered from each other, dense is they are too much close to each other. So if we are finding any point based on the reasons of density, like their closeness to each other, too much close to each other, then they are known as density based clusters. So they are used when the clusters are irregular or intertwined, and when the noise or outliers are present, then we go with the technique of density based clusters. We have conceptual clusters. So they are nothing as they are simply they are sharing some property or sharing some concept, and based on their concept they are found into one. Like in this case, two overlapping circles are there, so it finds a cluster that share some common property and represent a particular concept. So based on this, we can say we are having these like conceptual clusters, density based clusters, contiguity clusters, center based clusters, well separated clusters. So we are basically having these points of aggregation for forming the clusters. So in today's video, this video we have discussed about what is clustering, how clustering is different from classification, and then we have also discussed about the points on which the basics for clustering is formed, like well separated, center based, contiguous, density based clusters. So in the next video we will be discussing about the basic types of clustering, like partitional clustering, hierarchical clustering, and all those types based on which further clustering algorithms are coming into the existence. So thanks for watching the video.